Hello. In this video, I will present the paper Service Quality Through Government Proactivity, a concept of non-interaction. The paper was written by Dian Balta, a colleague of mine, and myself, Peter Kuhn, and we both work at Fortis, a research institute based in Munich, Germany. This paper is about government proactivity. Government proactivity can be a positive thing. If a government acts on its own and therefore saves you the application or the effort to tell them what you need and help you, for example, with child benefits, that can be good and can be a nice service. However, for some services, government proactivity can also be negative. An example would be student loans that have to be paid back and therefore cause you debt. If a government provides you with automatic proactive student loans, this might not be the optimal choice for you, and therefore you might perceive it as a negative thing. Therefore, the question arises, what is the exact interplay between government proactivity with the quality of a service? To answer this question, we dig a bit deeper into the background of those two concepts. Proactive government is a term that can be defined as the reduction of user effort by the government and can be seen as a fundamental shift in how government works. Instead of pulling data from the user, instead of trying to get everything they need from the user, the government tries to provide that by themselves and tries to push services towards the user. This has been conceptualized also as no-stop shop in contrast to the one-stop shop, which, as the name says, means that you can get a service without even stopping by. And all that taken together is why some argue that proactive government might be the next step in government. On the other hand, there's a rich body of literature on service quality, and service quality usually is conceptualized in dimensions. Papadomileaki and Ventas 2012 proposed such dimensions for e-government, and we will use them later. That's why I present them here. Those dimensions are trust, efficiency, reliability, and user support. Service quality is all about what makes a service a good service. To answer the question of this paper, we used an argumentative deductive approach and performed a literature review as well as a qualitative use case study with the city of Munich. In the course of this, we conducted 10 expert interviews and a workshop. For more details on the methodology, I would like to refer to the paper and continue with the central idea of this paper. The central idea of this paper is to consider public services by their interactions. This interaction-based approach lets you define public services as the entirety of its interactions. As you can see in this example, the first interaction might be a trigger, something like an application that shows the government that you need something. With this form, with this application, you might also provide eligibility data that the government uses to decide whether you are actually eligible for this service. Then you might have an interaction to pay for a fee or a certain required amount to get the service. And finally, you might pick up the result, which could be an ID card or any other token or document from the government offices. So if those interactions basically define a public service, the question is, why do we need them at all? And a proactive service, a proactive government would make a service such that you don't have any interactions. However, if you want to go there, you have to consider what is the actual purpose of those interactions. Why do we need them? And we propose two groups of interaction purposes, that is data provisions, such as data for specifying the service needed, for eligibility checks, or for identification, like name and address. And the second group, support functions, that can be triggering the service itself, authentication, payment, and, as mentioned before, logistics. Using this as an idea, we now come back to service quality. And the question is, what happens if I get rid of those interactions? And also, what happens to the interaction purpose, which probably still has to be fulfilled? Because if the data is not provided with this user-government interaction, the data has to come from somewhere else. And exactly this situation is the focus of our framework. We ask what happens with the service quality dimensions. How do those service quality dimensions react for the reduction of a specific interaction that served a certain purpose? For that, to operationalize this, we built a framework that you can see on the right side, and that has the service quality dimensions in the columns and the non-interaction, the interaction purpose that is now fulfilled in another way in the rows. The way how this works is you take any interaction and you consider its purpose and think about how this purpose can be fulfilled in a non-interactive, in a proactive version of this service. And you then check how this non-interactive fulfillment interplays with trust, with efficiency, with reliability, and user support. In an exemplary application, we considered the service of free public transport for pupils in Bavaria. So the transport to school is supposed to be free, but to get this service right now, parents have to apply for their children. Also, the pupils have to pick up the according ticket in school. In a proactive, non-interactive version of the service, the identification of the pupil that happens in the application by providing a name and an address of the child now has to be done by the government, for example, by accessing the state school database. This might interact or interplay with trust, because the child and the parents have to now trust the government to access those data for this purpose only. Also, the trigger of the service might not be perfect, because sometimes the government might miss a pupil and therefore this child will not get a ticket in time for school start. So while you have no application anymore, which is more efficient, this also might be less reliable and interfere with this service quality dimension. So what's the takeaway? The takeaway is indeed non-interaction, the reduction of interaction, interplays with service quality in a non-trivial way. It's not easy to say that proactivity is always good or always bad. The lens of interaction purposes can help to explore this interplay, however, and the existing conceptualizations of service quality, namely the dimensions that we used, can help to understand non-interactive services, even though they were designed for interactive services. In the future, the roles of the individual interaction types and purposes should be researched in a more extensive manner. And it would be interesting to see whether, apart from the interaction-based approach, other lenses, other perspectives on this topic can help to understand the interplay better. Also, how exactly proactivity interplays with service quality is still not precisely answered yet. Thank you very much.